So tell me, is there anything you could do in the next 6 weeks to completely ruin your life? Is there? Well, I guess there is. What about in the next 6 weeks? Is there anything you could do to add value, to improve your life? If the answer to those two questions is yes and yes, well, friend, you just declared you have a choice. Now, we're all aware of that, aren't we? We have a choice to say yes or no, I can or I can't, I will or I won't, I want to or I have to. You know, we often talk about attitude, but attitude needs a plan for change. You might have a great attitude, but you need a plan for change. In talking to all sorts of people about in all sorts of arenas, from business to church to families, I've often asked them, what's your plan? Now, I'm not talking about money necessarily. I'm talking about life. I'm talking about your state of mind. Have a look at this question on the screen. When was the last time you did something for the first time? Whoa. Let me give you a little background to that, because I got to tell you something. This question changed my life. I like being a difference maker, a life changer. I'm sure a lot of you do as well. I was doing a radio program years ago now, from Australia to New Zealand. They'd patched me through on the phone and away we went. Funniest thing was the introduction to the program was Chris Maynard, the voice of New Zealand, which was, well, always put a smile on my face because I'm an Aussie. But nonetheless, that's how they introduced me, and I talked to the country. It was great. Went on for years. And one day, I'm talking to Mike on air. And he was a fellow that would work with me on this. And he great guy, great man, very well known throughout the country in New Zealand. And I said to him, Mike, when was the last time you did something for the first time? Well, you got to know something. You probably already do. That 3 or 4 seconds silence on radio is a long time. I mean, you keep that sort of silence, people just flick the channel. He would have been silent for, oh dear, it seemed like a lot longer. It was possibly 6 or 7 seconds, about that long. The first word that came from his mouth was, whoa. And I went, you all right? And he went, you and I have got to talk off air. That question hit me like a ton of bricks. Well, you know what? That question also hit me like a ton of bricks. During that time, things were going well, relationally, spiritually. Business was doing well. I was speaking all around the country. All sorts of things were going well. But in me, I was stirred up. And not in a good way. I felt a sense of anxiety about life, and I didn't know why. I pray. Those of you who know me know that I'm a Christian. I pray a lot. And yet, although things were going okay, I could see some areas of my life starting to slip. And this question changed how I think about life. I discovered that when I asked myself this question, as Mike did, we hadn't done anything for the first time in a long time. He admitted to me off air, whoa, I haven't done anything for the first time in, I think he said 20 years. He was very successful in his relationship, successful in his business world, well known, and yet he was dissatisfied with himself. Somehow dissatisfied. And yet when he ticked all the boxes, as did I. So, well, as time went by, I started to do things I'd never done before. I want to see. You always remember the first time. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you remember the first kiss. You remember the first job. You remember the first date. You remember the first time you got fired from a job? Not too often. You remember the first roller coaster. I went to a place called Dreamworld on the Gold Coast, and families there, and everyone wanted to get onto the roller coaster. Well, I didn't want to go. I didn't want to get on the thing at all. They all said, oh, it's a great adrenaline rush. I said, friend, I've got enough adrenaline in my life. I don't need this. Well, peer pressure and all, I got on the thing, closed my eyes, and away we went. By the end of it, let me tell you something. I was exhilarated. I got on a second time. I got on a third time that day. I was exhilarated. It proved the point to me that first-time events matter. Now, I remember the first time. You know what? I do not remember. And we'd been there a few times to Dreamworld. I don't remember the fifth time. I don't remember the sixth time. Who remembers the first man that landed on the moon? Who remembers that? I mean, you all know it's Neil Armstrong, right? Put his foot on the moon. Do you remember the third guy? Who was the third guy? I don't know. Right. You remember the first time. It has an impact. Now, the first time you might not be too good. Well, the first time on that roller coaster, I wasn't even really looking. I think I opened my eyes a couple of times, particularly when the thing went around. I'm thinking, here we go, right? You might be a bit wobbly. You might not be too crash hot at whatever it is, but you started. You see, you'd never get the third time or the fourth time or the fifth time unless you did the first time. I developed a graph for this. You'll see it on there. Now, you might not see it too clearly, but on the graph, I have a list down the bottom, right? Family, spiritual, relational, business, money. You might want to add emotional, and I put this list down the bottom. Along the side, you'll see numbers. Possibly you'll see numbers. If you can't, well, I'll let you know what they are. There are 10, an 8, a 5, and a 0. And then the middle line is the cutoff line. And this is what I developed. If you had done something for the first time in the last 2 weeks, you score a 10. If you had done something for the first time, now I'm talking first time, right? You've never done it before. Hot air balloon, never done it before, go and have a go, right? If you've done something for the first time, you score a 10 if it's in the last 2 weeks. If it's in the last 2 months, well, you score an 8. And if it's in the last 6 months, you score a 5. And this is what I developed. If I had not done something in the last 6 months for the first time, I scored a 0. Now I looked at my life. And guess what? I flatlined. Right across. It was a flat line. I thought, no wonder. I mean, some of you may have heard of the law of imbalance. How does a baby walk the first time? Well, they've got to put their foot out. Now, if you've ever seen a baby walk for the first time, well, you get excited, don't you? It's the first time. Now, you don't say to that child, come on, don't start this first step to routine with me. When you run around the block, then we'll get excited. No, you cheer, you clap, because you know that first step's going to lead to the second step, lead to the third, lead to the fourth, lead to the fifth. You know that first time event has mattered. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to do first time events and everything. That's why I've said 6 months. All right, up to 6 months. You've got to have done something. Now, have a look at your life. Draw a graph, something like this, right? Your own graph. And down the bottom, right? Family, partner, relationship, business, money, children, emotional, spiritual, whatever that might be along the bottom of the graph. And then literally plot yourself. And you're going to be surprised. Do the exercise. Now, I do this thing fairly regularly. Now, in talking with couples, for example, I have done this with them, only to discover, more often than not, that I've not done anything for the first time in a very, very long time. Do we say that life can get boring? Well, yeah, life can be great. You can have all the money, you can have the best relationship, you can own your own home, you can have a great business or a great job, but still feel internally dissatisfied. It's a life changer. It is a life changer. It's a difference maker. When was the last time you did something for the first time?